Floor is yours, Margaret.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Esteemed Dr. Juan Moklim, Director of the Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding, APCEIU, esteemed Dr. Dala Diodov from Duke University, and Asia Pacific members of the Regional Global Citizenship Education GCED Network, participants and colleagues, good morning to all of you from Bangkok. It's my great pleasure to see that there's so many people online today and really interested in this important workshop. So on behalf of UNESCO, I would like to welcome you to this workshop on GCED, Taking It Local for master trainees. This workshop is organized within the framework of the Asia Pacific Regional Global Citizenship Education Network, which is co-chaired by UNESCO and APCEIU. As a secretariat of the network, UNESCO Bangkok has been conducting various GCED activities each year in collaboration with the network members and together with APCEIU since its launch in 2017. The efforts have been implemented in the areas like research, advocacy, capacity building on GCED, taking it local in the Asia Pacific region, GCED learning and assessment, etc. While the world may be increasingly interconnected, human rights violations, inequality and poverty still threaten peace and sustainability. In addition, disruptions of learning and school reopening call for collective actions to instill resilience in our education systems and, most importantly, in our learners. Global citizenship education is UNESCO's response to these challenges. It is a transformative educational approach that nurtures respect and solidarity in learners in order to foster a sense of belonging to common humanity, as well as empowering learners of all ages to become responsible and active global citizens in building inclusive, peaceful, secure, and sustainable societies. The international commitment to GCED in tandem with education for sustainable development is recognized in SDG Target 4.7, which aims at providing learners with cross-cutting competencies to take action towards inclusive growth and peaceful coexistence. It specifically states, by 2030, ensure that all learners acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development. So we're very pleased to see many representatives from educational institutions and government agencies joining us today to share your insights on GCED in your local contexts. Through this two-day workshop, we hope that the awareness of GCED in the region will be further raised, the capacity of key GCED stakeholders and influencers like you will be strengthened, and the connection of GCED values in local contexts and its universal conceptual dimensions like solidarity, shared sense of humanity, and respect for diversity will be deepened. We look forward to your active participation and fruitful discussion at this workshop. After the workshop, you are strongly encouraged to take the activities to your national and to your local contexts and practice them with your colleagues, students, fellow educators, families, and friends. In order to move forward, we need your strong commitment and support to a collective effort in fulfilling Target 4.7 in view of the regional and national context. I wish you a very interesting workshop and thank you very much. Over to you, Faria.
Ms. Margaret Sachs-Israel, Chief of Section for Inclusive Quality Education, UNESCO Bangkok. Thank you so much for your inspiring words and for joining us this morning. Your guidance and support means a lot to us, and we are really happy to have you on board with us as we begin this exciting initiative. Our goal is to work at local levels within national context, and this workshop today with Dr. Dala is a very important step in that direction. So thank you very much for being here with us this morning. We now welcome Dr. Hyun Mook Lim, Director of APCEIU. We will have opening remarks through a message from Director of APCEIU.
Good morning, everyone. Warm greetings from the Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding, APCEIU in short, located in Seoul, South Korea. Thank you so much for joining the GCED Taking It Local workshop today. Since its launch in 2017, the Asia Pacific GCED network has continued working with its members to better understand GCED and facilitate its implementation in diverse contexts of the region. In 2019, the network developed a practical guide for educators, Understanding GCED in Asia Pacific, a how-to guide for taking it local. The guide was supposed to familiarize various stakeholders with the concept of GCED by linking it to some similar notions already existing in diverse cultures of the region. Today's workshop is to make this guide really practical. This workshop will help trainers develop workshop plans utilizing this guide on how to take GCED local. In today's critical situation, the importance of GCED is greater than ever. But still, many people have some negative perception that GCED is abstract and away from local realities. So in order to promote GCED more actively, we need to develop and practice strategies for taking it local. In this regard, today's workshop is very important and meaningful. We expect that this workshop will contribute to making it GCED closer to local realities and contexts. APCEIU is grateful to UNESCO Bangkok for its active coordination of the Asia Pacific GCED network. I am particularly thankful to Ms. Margaret Sachs-Israel and her team at UNESCO Bangkok for their initiatives and leadership for GCED in the region. Thank you all again for joining the workshop. I wish the workshop every success.
We would like to thank APCEIU for the welcome remarks and for their inspiring message. We'll take a minute for a group photo, and so everybody is invited to turn on their cameras.
Okay, on the count of 1, 2, 3, please put down a big smile. 1, 2, 3. And the second page. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lee. And now it is my pleasure to give the floor to Miss Lee Wang, who has been in touch with all of you to organize this workshop, Understanding Global Citizenship in Asia Pacific, taking it local. So Miss Lee Wang, over to you for introducing the workshop today.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. For those I haven't had the chance to meet with, my name's Lee. I support the UNESCO Bangkok's global citizenship education related activities, as well as education for sustainable development activities. So please allow me to start with a few housekeeping announcements. We look forward to seeing you to stay for the entire workshop during the 2 days. And please feel free to post comments or questions in the chat box at any time. And please try to identify yourself or your organization when posting a comment or question. And if possible, kindly change your display name to name followed by your organization. And we also encourage everyone to put on your camera and at least during the group activities, try to engage with everyone in the group. And please kindly mute your microphone through the entire time unless invited to speak or when it's group activities. This workshop is being recorded. On the last note, we need one volunteer from our workshop to be the reporter of day 1, who will share a very brief recap in the morning of day 2. If you are interested to be the volunteer, please post one comment in the chat box or simply click the raise hand function. Or you can also try to turn on your microphone and let me know if you would like to be the volunteer of the reporter. Please don't be shy. We only have one person who will be, the luckiest among all participants. Do I have a volunteer at the moment? If we do not have a volunteer at the moment, please feel free to let me know in the chat box. You can post in the chat box that you would like to be the volunteer of the reporter on day 2. Otherwise, okay, we have one, Mr. Mazir Jeffrey. I believe you will be the volunteer of day 2. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, to give you a little bit brief background of this workshop, as Dr. Lim mentioned, we developed this Understanding GCED in Asia Pacific guidebook together with Dr. Darla Deardorff, our main facilitator of the workshop, as well as APCEIU in 2019, and we finished by 2020. And last year, we also conducted a GCED needs assessment survey in our region. And 2 major challenges were identified with the survey results. The first one is lack of awareness on GCED, especially among policymakers. So we developed one policymaking advocacy and awareness raising guidebook earlier this year to address this challenge. And then this workshop is our action to address the second challenge, which is the lack of capacity building for teachers, policymakers, administrators, and students, etc., all GCED stakeholders. So the purpose is quite straightforward. First, to showcase a model of how this workshop GCED taking local can be done in our region. And second, to empower all participants to become facilitators after this workshop so that everyone can create your own workshops when you're back to your home country or in your local context. The overall expected result is to create a pool of facilitators or master trainers in our region who can conduct workshops at local levels to empower others to enable global citizenship education. One concrete output would be a completed draft action plan from all of you to have a few ideas on how to conduct the workshop, etc. A few information regarding our workshop. First one, we received 59 registrations until 12 a.m. this morning from 16 countries in our region. And many of you are teachers, university professors, educators, representatives from ministries of education, other policymakers, administrators, and last but not least, we're very happy to see that we have a few representatives from the youth group, students joining us as well. So to sort of refresh our memories of the agenda, Please allow me to briefly go through. So after my presentation, Dr. Faryal Khan from UNESCO Bangkok will introduce more about the guidebook. And then with that, following that, Dr. Darla Deerdorf will start the workshop exercise with the opening of a story circle exercise, where everyone would be put into a breakout room and engage with each other. Dr. Deerdorf will give more details later. And then we'll follow that, we'll have a very short break, and then to see if you have any questions and reflections, and also share a few tips to facilitate the workshop in the local context, etc. And to end day one, we have a very short evaluation, and thanks to Mr. Maziar, we have a volunteer now to share a recap on day two. So day two schedule is like this. I won't go to the details again. So just to refresh our memories, and we look forward to your active engagement during the workshop. Thank you, Dr. Khan.
Thank you very much. This was really good to get an overview of the next 2 days and to see how we are going to be proceeding, and for introducing the workshop. So I'm going to share my screen. So perhaps this will stop other screen sharing. So I will continue with mine. Lee, can you let me know if you can see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Wonderful. So today I'm going to be very brief and give the floor very soon to Dr. Darla Deerdorf. But building on what Lee has just mentioned, and before we actually begin the workshop, I thought it was important for us to just look at what do we mean by global citizenship education, and UNESCO's efforts for taking global citizenship education local, and understanding also global citizenship education in the Asia Pacific, how to guide for taking GCED local. Just to introduce the guide and what it is, we hope you've all had a chance to, look at the guide already. But our work in global citizenship education, it's framed within the Sustainable Development Goal 4, Target 4.7, which really focuses on ensuring that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, amongst others, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. So this indicator, this target with its proposed indicator, the extent to which global citizenship education is mainstreamed in our policies and programs at all levels, is really the overarching framework under which the UNESCO efforts on global citizenship education are situated. Global citizenship education is really at the heart of UNESCO's vision of quality education. To develop education systems that are fit for purpose, relevant, and adapted to face global challenges, such as climate change, deepening inequalities, human rights abuses, and increases in discrimination and intolerance. So we have 3 core notions of global citizenship education, and these are respect for diversity, solidarity, and a shared sense of humanity. And our goal is to bolster learners' critical thinking, empathy, respect and appreciation of diversity, and enable them to take active roles in building a more peaceful, inclusive, and secure world. And to nurture a positive sense of identity that contributes to the collective well-being of individuals and societies, prevents the spread of violent extremist ideologies, combats hate speech, and upholds the principle of the rule of law. So UNESCO, just to introduce the guidebook builds on some of UNESCO's key work that has already been done to take global citizenship education, taking it local. There was a global guidebook, the Global Citizenship Education Contextualization, linking conceptions of global citizenship education to different worldviews. And this work was done globally, and it's available on UNESCO's website. Following the global work on taking it local, within the Asia and the Pacific region, there was a workshop and a regional study that was conducted on global citizenship education, localizing, taking it local, but also what are the challenges in taking it local? And then how can we overcome those challenges to really enable schools and communities to address these issues within local and national contexts. So building on the work that has already been done globally and within the Asia and the Pacific region, the purpose of the guidebook, which is going to be at the core of the workshop over the next 2 days, is to utilize the findings from global citizenship education, taking it local, to guide stakeholders to design and carry out workshops on global citizenship education at local levels. And we are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Darla Deardorff, who is the principal author of the Asia and the Pacific Guidebook, and has also collaborated with UNESCO globally on these issues. The guidebook targets both policymakers and teachers, educators, with suggested approaches and activities. It provides hands-on ideas using story circles and so forth. There are some underlying assumptions that inform the methodologies of the guidebook. And one of the main underlying assumption is that the deeper the understanding of policymakers and teachers and educators on what do we mean by global citizenship education, the better the integration of global citizenship education into policies and eventually classrooms. So we really need to have a common, deeper understanding of these issues. And local values and stories are created and popularized by the people. And if the connection of global citizenship education notions and local values and stories can be made, then global citizenship education becomes much easier. It becomes more popular at the local levels because there is already a link with local values and stories within local contexts. So local contexts are critical for teachers, learners, and community members to understand global citizenship education. We hope that by utilizing the guidebook, will be able to promote knowledge of global citizenship education and how to embed these competencies and skills within local contexts, particularly the 3 notions of respect for diversity, solidarity, and a shared sense of humanity. And we hope to have a clearer understanding of this concept of global citizenship education, which can often be a very abstract concept, through the lens of local values and stories that enable stakeholders to embrace a seemingly new concept in the local communities. The 3 core notions, respect for diversity, solidarity, and a sense of shared humanity, are going to be evident in the local values and stories across the Pacific and the Asia-Pacific countries. Therefore, finding connections within the local context would be a natural continuum. So thank you very much. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And without much ado, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Darla Deardorff, who has been the author of the guidebook and who is with us today. The floor is yours, Dr. Darla Deardorff of Duke University.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khan, and good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you, and it's such an honor to join with you here. How I wish we could all be in person, but of course, that's not possible, and there are certainly positives of us being able to join virtually together. And I actually was in Bangkok a few years ago teaching at APCEIU-UNESCO. And so I can imagine that we're all there in Bangkok gathered together for this workshop. So I am very excited to share with you some of the activities that are put forth and proposed in the how-to guide. And I'm very glad to have been able to work with colleagues on the global level on the global Taking It Local guide, and was thrilled then to see that there's the Asia Pacific Taking It Local publication that came from that. And now with the how-to guide, really exciting to see what you will do in the workshops in your own regions and local areas. And so, as you've heard from my colleagues today, this workshop is helping you prepare you for some of the activities that are in the guide that you can then take and use and adapt within your own context. And so we thought the best way for you to understand more about these activities is to have you participate in some of them so that you can understand more about these particular activities that we have included in the how-to guide. So we wanted to start with the UNESCO story circles. We are proposing the use of this methodology as a way to begin your workshop. And we're excited for you to be able to participate in the UNESCO story circles. So to begin, I have just a few slides to share with you about this intercultural methodology, which is available as an open access manual. So there's another whole manual. The hard copy looks like this, but it's available in 5 languages, and including Mandarin is being done now. So that would be a 6th language. And and I just saw email exchanges with UNESCO headquarters around having it translated into Japanese as well. So more languages are coming, but we're excited to share with you about the story circles methodology. So if I could have my UNESCO colleagues display the slides, we can begin. Thank you so much. All right, so this methodology has actually been used around the world by UNESCO, and I wanted to share with you a little bit of the way in which it came about. So on the next slide, I want to just share with you the overview of this presentation. So I wanted to share with you a little bit of the story behind story circles that UNESCO is using. We will then do an activity involving all of us that uses chat. So get ready. We will do that. And then the majority of our time will be spent in the breakout rooms, as you heard my colleague Li Wang say. You'll be in the breakout rooms for about 45 minutes. And it is very important that you're hopefully able to turn your cameras on during that time. And of course, stay for the whole time, because then we will come back here to talk about your story circle experience and see what questions you may have before we take a brief break and continue sharing with you more about some of the resources and materials that are in the how-to guide. So on the next slide, I wanted to just kind of give a little bit more of a background about story circles. I have been working with UNESCO for the last decade around the topic of my research, which is on intercultural competencies. And I've worked with UNESCO on several different publications. And I see the intercultural competencies are very closely connected to the global citizenship education. In particular, the three core notions very much are integrated with intercultural competence that you've already heard about, this respect for diversity, the shared sense of humanity, and the solidarity that we feel with each other. So this is all very much a part of the research that I have been working on. And member states came to UNESCO and asked if there could be a concrete tool that would actually be available to help individuals develop and practice intercultural competencies. And so we did further research with focus groups and interviews around the world. And what emerged is something that's been around for as long as humans have been around, and that is the sharing of our personal stories, of our life experiences through circles. And circles have been existing in indigenous cultures and societies for centuries. And so hence we came to story circles, using both our own lived experiences that we share with each other through circles. Now, circles have been used now, not just in indigenous cultures, but also in mainstream societies for many different purposes. And maybe some of you have participated in circles. There are circles of support, circles for restorative justice, for peace and conflict mediation. I know many school teachers who use circles in their classrooms at the beginning of each day with their students, the talking circles. So there are many different kinds of circles for different purposes. This is the first time that we are using circles for the purpose of developing and practicing these key intercultural skills that really relate so closely to the three core notions of global citizenship education. And so that's a little bit of the backstory. And so on the next slide, I want to share just a little bit more. These are photos from the pilots of the UNESCO Story Circles, obviously pre-pandemic. We were able to pilot these UNESCO Story Circles in all 5 UNESCO regions around the world, because UNESCO wanted to see, do these really work? And the parameters were with any group of people anywhere in the world using little to no resources. And that could be facilitated by really anyone, that you don't need to have a special degree or training in intercultural communication. And the answer is yes. These story circles worked beautifully in all 5 UNESCO regions around the world. They can be facilitated by really anyone with facilitation skills, and they achieve their objectives. And so the pictures you see here, our very first pilot was actually in Bangkok. I was there for that. It was when I was teaching at Thammasat. So I just had to come across town to the UNESCO office there, and we held our very first story circles there in Bangkok. Then other pilots were held in Harare, Zimbabwe, in San Jose, Costa Rica, in Tunis, Tunisia, and in Vienna, Austria. Now, these are pictures from many of those pilots, and you can see actually only one of them was in a formal learning setting. That was the one in the middle school in Vienna, Austria, where most of the students, about 90% of them, were from immigrant or migrant backgrounds. So they were not born in Austria. You can see that 2 of these were done literally outside under trees. So they don't even need a building. The one in Harare, one of the story circles in Harare was outside, and as well as one of the ones in San Jose. So this just gives you a little idea about story circles. With the pandemic, UNESCO has taken story circles virtually and used story circles to train United Nations staff around the world. So we have used story circles with UN staff in Brazil and in Cameroon. The end of this month, we are going to be training UN staff in Mali, and the next month in Sudan. So it's been used many different places. And then of course, I have been using it in the courses I teach at the university and in many other contexts around the world, including with over 200 teachers in China in person. And since the pandemic, over 400 participants online in China, and several times in Japan, and so on. So it's been used widely already, and we're excited about you including this as a way to start your workshop on global citizenship education development. So that's a little bit of the backstory and to give you an idea about it. On the next slide, you will see, we can get to the next slide. Yes, so we have an activity for you. Now, this term intercultural competence and looking at intercultural skills as really being important for the three core notions of GCED, we'd like to invite you to think about someone you know personally. This could be a neighbor, a colleague, someone in your community, or someone known to you. So this could be a famous person. And you don't need to tell us who you're thinking about. That's for you to know. But this needs to be someone that you think does a really good job of connecting with lots of different kinds of people. Perhaps people, yes, from different cultures, with different languages, different religions, different socioeconomic backgrounds, could even be different ages, different generations. So someone who's very good at connecting with younger people as well as older people, even geographic regions in the same country, north or south or urban and rural. So think about someone you know who really can connect amazingly well with all these different kinds of differences that might be found in people. And in the text box, in the chat, please just write words or phrases which describe this person. What is it about them that allows them to be so successful in making these great connections? So I'll give you a moment to think about this person, and then if you could describe just in a few words or phrases, describe them. How is it that they're able to be so successful in connecting with lots of different kinds of people? Wonderful. I'm seeing already some wonderful descriptions here. Someone who's personable, open to experiences, who can connect the dots. And that's really a global citizen, right? Being able to connect the dots, who's open-minded and kind, friendly and warm, respectful. Someone who's able to use unbiased communication, who's constantly immersing in the community, connecting with those stakeholders, who appreciates differences and is always wanting to learn more. I'm seeing a lot of respect, yes, maybe even someone who's well-traveled, who has a lot of interest in others, who's humble, always ready to be interrupted. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Who is positive and understanding. I see several words around empathy and inclusion, who's passionate. Wow, these are wonderful descriptions. Who can think globally, especially important for a global citizen, for someone who's connecting with others wherever they may be. Yeah, somebody who wants to do something for others, who never gives up, who's a really good listener. Excellent. Oh, lots of open-minded, respect, non-judgmental. Yes. Oh, thank you so much. These are such wonderful descriptions of the persons that you're thinking of. So taking this, what you've just done is describe, yes, a global citizen and someone who's interculturally competent. Thank you. And so many more wonderful descriptions there. Yeah, the sense that we all belong to the planet Earth, that we are all in this together. That solidarity is so important. So on the next slide, you'll see that what you've just done is describe actually what we can find in the literature and in the theory. And this is, I won't go into all of this right now, but I just wanted to show you, this is some of the research I've been doing and coming up with one of the first research-based definitions around intercultural competence. And a lot of the words that you've said just now in chat, you will find here in these theoretical models, including that listening, the respect, the empathy. So thank you so much for the open-mindedness. So thank you so much for listing those words out here. And so coming from kind of this theoretical framework based on research, then on the next slide, you will see that we took the goals for story circles directly from these frameworks, from the literature. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll show you the actual goals that you'll see. Hopefully my colleague can assist us in turning to that, because I don't have control over that, can assist us in going to the next slide.
Mr. Milkhun, could we go to the next slide, please? Maybe there's a challenge.
Yes, maybe there is. So I can certainly continue on that the goals for story circles, and if we're able to get the visual slide up, you'll see that it's about participants being able to demonstrate respect. So through story circles, they're actually able to demonstrate the respect that so many of you talked about in chat, that they're able to really enhance that empathy that they can feel for each other, that they're able to increase their own cultural self-awareness, and that they're able to, in the end, hopefully develop deeper relationships with each other. So those were some of the goals we have. One other one that many of you mentioned was to be able to practice listening, but not just any kind of listening. In story circles and in connecting with people who are different from us, listening for understanding becomes so critical. And so I wanted to just pause and say just a word about listening, that as humans, we tend to usually listen either for response or for judgment. It's just natural. That's what we do as humans. And when we focus on listening in this way, how will I respond to you? What is my opinion of what you're saying? I'm actually focusing really more on me, right, than on you, because I'm in my head, I'm still thinking about what will I say back to you? What do I think about what you're saying? And so that becomes a challenge to really be able to, thank you very much. There you see the goals there listed for you. So for story circles, it's really important to focus on the listening for understanding part, to really focus 100% on the person speaking and just giving yourself fully to what they are saying, the words they say, how they say those words, the nonverbal communication, as much as you can see in this little square on the screen. If we were in person, of course, you would literally be sitting in circles and you could see all of each other in the full body language. So these are the goals that are really important then for story circles. And this is, and you can see that these are actually very, very closely connected to the three core notions of global citizenship, that through these particular goals, there is a way to generate this respect for diversity, the solidarity, and the shared sense of humanity. And so I really hope you'll come out of the story circle experience with those three core notions of global citizenship education development really at the heart of the experience itself. So let's go a little deeper then into what this is all about as we get into story circles. So on the next slide, you will see some really important guidelines. And I just wanted to emphasize several of these. First of all, what is said in your story circle stays in your story circle. It's really important to maintain confidentiality. I cannot emphasize that enough. That it's really important to maintain this confidentiality. Even when we come back together here in the main room, we're going to be talking about your experience, and you can share lessons learned from the stories that you heard, but please do not share any of the stories told. So for example, if Lee Wong were in my group, I can't say, oh, Lee told this wonderful story about, no, because that is Lee's story to tell, not mine. And also I should not be sharing that with everyone else, right? But I can say, oh, in the stories that were told in my story circle, that one of the lessons learned was the importance of family, or whatever it was that you heard from the stories. As you look through these guidelines, many of these have to do with being yourself, being authentic and genuine in how you share and what you share, and just to share simply and clearly. I know for many of you, you may be sharing in a language that is not your first language. And even though this is about stories, sharing your own life story, this is not about a performance. This is not about storytelling. Just share simply about your own experience. That's what's most important. And then as you listen to each other, be open to learning. This story that you share is a gift that you give to others, and others are giving you a gift also in sharing of themselves. And so be open to learning from each of the stories that you hear, and ask yourself, what can I learn from the story that I just heard? And then this is where the listening for understanding becomes very important. There are going to be 3 rounds in the story circles. And in between each of the stories and in between each of the rounds, it's important that there is no interruption, no questions, or no comments. Now, for some people, this might be easy to do. You don't ask questions, you don't make comments or interrupt either between the stories or even between the rounds. For someone like me, this is very difficult, because I'm the kind of person who likes to ask questions and say, oh, then what happened? Oh, and I had a similar experience, and so I like to make comments. But if I'm a participant during this time, I need to just sit and listen. You can nod your head, you can listen without using words, okay? That's really important. And not until the very end, that's when you can begin to just have more of a conversation with each other, okay? So let me just stop for a moment and say, are there any other guidelines that you would like to add to this list that would help you feel comfortable? And if so, you can type those into the chat. So I will stop for a moment to see, is there anything else you want to add to this list of guidelines or commitments that we will make to each other in the story circles? Okay. So kind of hopefully thumbs up. Oh, keep it relevant. Yes, and no judgment. Absolutely. Thank you very much for both of those. And yes, please, if at all possible, do keep your cameras on during the session. That's going to be really important. Oh, I like it. Yes, generative listening. Yes, kind of really having that generative listening. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yes, respecting the speaker. So just giving your full attention, right, to the person speaking is very important. Thank you for adding those. So hopefully we can have kind of a thumbs up on all the guidelines, and you see the ones from the slide have also been posted here. And if you feel at some point someone needs a little reminder of the guidelines, if you could just kind of hold up your finger, perhaps kind of say like, remember the guidelines, that will, and you also have them now here in chat as well, so people can go back and look at those. So thank you very much for that. Now, the last piece I need to provide to you are the instructions of what will actually happen. And here you have the 3 rounds. So the first round, we consider it to be more of an icebreaker round, but it's also a way to begin to get to know each other and to build trust with each other. So you'll find this is a very structured protocol. It is very important to follow this protocol. It will mean the most, and you will get the most out of it if you follow this protocol as you see here on the slide, okay? So the first round, prompt 1, is in 2 minutes or less. Each person in your story circle will take turns to briefly say your name and 3 words or phrases that describe your background or identity and why those words or phrases are important to you. Okay, and so one person will start and say, hi, I'm Darla. And if I wanted to keep it more broad, I might say I'm a US citizen, I'm a woman, and I'm an educator. That doesn't tell you too much more than what you already know about me, but maybe that's what I feel comfortable sharing. So I share that and I say why those words are important to me. If I wanted to share a little bit more with you, if you're in my circle, I might say, hi, everyone. My name is Darla. I'm a Christian, I'm a mother, and I'm an interculturalist. And then I would say why those 3 words are important to me. Okay. And then each person would go around and say the same thing with no interruptions or no questions or comments. Okay. Just listening for understanding. Then when the last person finishes prompt 1, then you go straight into prompt 2, and the first person who spoke will then speak again. And this is really the core part of the story circle experience, that in 3 minutes or less, tell about a specific memorable interaction you have had with someone who is different from you. And this can be any kind of difference. Back to our earlier activity, different language, culture, religion, age, geographic region of the country, whatever that difference might be. So just think about a specific memorable interaction you have had with someone different from you and what you learned about yourself or the other person in that experience. So 3 minutes or less. Again, one person speaks. When they finish, the next person starts, and then the next person, and so on. And if you don't need the full 3 minutes or 2 minutes in prompt 1, that's fine. If prompt 1 takes you 30 seconds, that's fine. Don't feel like you have to keep talking. So that's fine also. After you finish prompt 2, the last round is called the flashback round, and it goes really quickly. It's a very quick round because all you do is complete the sentence you see there for each person. So let's say Li Wang was the first person in our group to speak. And so she was the first one who spoke on prompt 1 and then prompt 2. In the flashback round, we come back to her. This time she listens. This time she's not speaking. The rest of us go around the circle and say, Lee, the most memorable part of your story for me was this. And then the next person says this, completes that sentence, and the next person and the next person. Okay. And then they'll say, I was the second person to speak. Then it's my turn to listen. And then the rest of you in my group would complete the sentence. Darla, the most memorable part of your story for me was this. And then the next person, and so on. This is the flashback. That's what that is. That's what that means, until everyone has received their flashbacks from the others. And this is on the second story told, the one about the interaction. There will be a temptation to want to say why it was memorable. Please don't say why, not yet. Wait until everyone has been able to receive their flashbacks. Then after that round, that's when you can actually begin to just have a conversation. And that's when you might say, oh, Lee, that was such a memorable story for me, that part, because I had that same thing happen to me. That's when I would say more of that. or that's when you can ask questions. That's also the time when you can debrief with each other. You can ask each other questions. You can think about what surprised us. What lessons did we learn from hearing each other's stories? That's an important part. And you'll have about 5 minutes or so to do that. And then we'll bring you back to the big group, and then we'll talk about the whole experience together. When you're in your story circle, if you want to make sure you stay in contact with each other, you might want to share your contact information in the chat before you come back to the main room. And we will be broadcasting out the prompts at the time we think your group should be discussing them. So you'll see prompt 1, then you'll see prompt 2 a little bit later, and so on. So that helps give you an idea if you need to kind of move a little faster or so on with the process, with the protocol. 2 other things I need to share with you briefly. You see that time is important here. The timekeeper will rotate. Each of you will be able to be a timekeeper because you'll take turns. And your timekeeper will be the person who comes after you alphabetically by first name. Okay, so once you're in the group, your timekeeper is the person who comes alphabetically by first name after your name. And the person who starts is the person whose birthday is closest to today. So if today is your birthday, happy birthday. And thanks for spending it with us. If otherwise, it's someone whose birthday just happened or will happen soon. So the very first thing you need to figure out is whose birthday is closest to today. And that is the person who will start. And then you will go alphabetical by first name after that person. So that's how we do it online. If we were in person, of course, we would be literally in a circle. So with that, I want to stop and see just any questions about the protocol, and also give you just a moment to think about what you will say for your 3 words and phrases, and also for the specific memorable interaction that you will share. So let me just pause for a moment. If you do have a question, you can put that into the chat about the protocol or about what will happen. And then think about what you want to share. Okay. I also am going to put my email address here so that if you have other questions when you're in your story circle, maybe someone can message me, and I'll be keeping a watch on my email, because if we were in person, I could then see you and you could wave your hand and I could come over to your group and see what your question is. But we're not in person, so this is the best we can do. I will not be coming in on your groups because I'm not part of your group and I have to respect the confidentiality, right? So I will be here in the main room, and then if you have a question, you could send someone out to the main room or just have someone message me and I can respond that way. If you get disconnected, and this sometimes happens, please come back to the main room and then we'll put you back into your group. Okay, so hopefully the technology will cooperate and you won't get disconnected. And there was a question about the flashback round. So that's the quick round at the end where you're simply completing the sentence about the second story told. And you go in order, but this time the storyteller listens and the others in your group, let's say, we do this with 4 to 6 people in a group. So there will be no more than 6 people in your group. And so you will potentially get flashbacks from 5 people in your group about the story that you told. And this is your turn to listen. The other people in your group simply complete that sentence. The most memorable part of your story for me was this. And then the next person says that, the next person. And then you go to the second storyteller in your group, and then the others do the same way, just complete the sentence. The most memorable part of your story for me was this. Okay. All right. I think we are ready to go into your breakouts, and we will have Lee, I think we'll need to have maybe about 40 minutes, about 35 to 40 minutes total in the groups.
Sure.
So I think we're ready at this time. And I look forward to seeing all of you back here when you finish your story circle experience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Darla. That was great.
Yes, I'm so excited to hear how the experiences go.
Yes, I think it's really great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Maggie, do you want to be in one of the rooms?
Could I be there as an observer, or we don't want observers?
No, this needs to be for like active participants.
Yeah. So we don't want to be there then.
Yeah, Maggie, do you want to be in one of the rooms? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, sure. I can just join and like say hi.
Okay, I'll assign you to the room.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Maggie from APCEIU, our
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Okay.
yes, partner organization. I was wondering if she would like to be in one of the rooms as a participant, and yeah.
And so our other colleagues who are here, Dr. Kaur, Nandita Singh, are they meant to be in a group?
Yes, and we have assigned them to all of the groups. The only unsigned ones are the three of us.
Okay, so there should be 3 of us in here in the main room, right?
Yeah,
3 or 4.
they
Yeah.
need to click join, which I'm sure it's on their screen.
So if we could go ahead and send the first prompt out now.
Sure.
So I just want to clarify, Nandita and Munchkin, they are here with us, or are they in groups?
Is there a way to put them into the group, or do they need to click on a button to accept?
Nandita Singh and Nandita, are you with us? Mr. Mongchimek?
And Dr. Kaur, Supreet Kaur?
Yes, Dr. Supreet Kaur, are you with us? You can unmute yourselves. Hi. Because I feel there are still some people with us, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
they're still with us. They should be able to click one button which we sent out already.
Do you need help? Do you need help? Dr. Supreet Kaur, Nandita Singh, and Mungchimeg Erdin. Do you need you need to be part of a group, right? Would you like to unmute yourselves and join us?
They cannot accept to join that room.
Can you transfer them, or
the name was in that breakout room, and then this time they should be click accept. But can I move them to waiting room?
Yes.
Oh, to the waiting room, or
yes?
No, not the waiting room, but to one of the groups.
One
Can
of
you
the
just-
group.
Yes,
Okay,
move
a
them,
moment, please.
but only to no more than 6 in a group. So make sure
Yeah,
they don't go to a
Camille,
group.
please don't do anything. I will do it.
Okay.
I have been doing, and
Copy that.
so I have assigned them into rooms. So they need to
Oh, okay.
click the accept button, which I think they might be away from their desks or something.
That's what I was wondering too. Maybe they're grabbing coffee or
there,
something, tea.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's no way that you could actually move them, right? They have to click.
Yeah, they have to click. We moved them already, but they have to click the accept button.
Ah, okay. I also did a private message to them
Yeah,
if they happen to see chat, but
yeah, I think they might be away from their desks at the moment.
I think so too. So at about in about 9 minutes, we need to send the second prompt.
Sure.
I can actually put this in the chat to you.
I
Or
in the chat.
okay, so at so what would that be? And you already have the prompt, so I'll just say second prompt. And then at I was trying to calculate out the time so we could, because I went over a little bit on the preparation. Let me see. Then at let's say at about 12:24, the flashback prompt. I just make a note of this here in chat for you in just a second, you'll see it. And then at about 12. Oh, you know what? I'm using my time, not yours. Sorry. Let me change it to your time. Okay. At 11.
Now is 11:06 for my time.
Yes. So in about 3 or 4 minutes, you would send out the second prompt.
Sure.
Then at about 11:33, this is not a prompt, but I'm going to put it here. So you can just maybe cut and paste it. I don't know. And then at about 11:40, well, I'm sorry, 11:38, 2-minute warning, and then 11:40, bring back to main room. Okay, so Lee, I just send those times to you so you have them.
Sure.
Do you see that now?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we just have to pay attention to send those out. And so we'll try to have everyone come back at about 11:40 back in the main room. And then that gives us 15 minutes instead of 20, but it gives us about 15 minutes to discuss debrief the experience, and then we can take a break.
Sure.
And as I mentioned, the other day, I will use the chat so that more people can kind of debrief from the experience that way too.
Sure.
And then we can, I forgot to ask, but we can save the chat transcript will be important. I've saved it here for myself, but I think it'll be good to have a saved record there for you all too.
Yeah, I'll save it as well.
Okay, super. Because I'll ask, one of the things I'll ask them to do is to type in like a takeaway or a lesson learned. So I think that'll be really good for you. Great. Thank you so much. So I see relatable. It was refreshing and engaging, wonderful and heartwarming, really rich and harmonious, wonderful. No boundaries in the world for humanity. And that's really what GCED is all about. Thank you so much. That it was self-fulfilling, reflective, fabulous, a wonderful experience. It was deep. Yeah, collaborative. Yes, and the sharing. Awesome that there were new thoughts. It was amazing. You made friends. That's so wonderful. That you really felt you could relate. You felt engaged, and it was lovely to meet gold-hearted people from around the region, that you learned so much, that there was really a lot of similarity despite the differences, right? That's what's so amazing about this, that you felt as one, that solidarity and that sense of shared humanity that's so important of the global citizenship. It was respecting diversity, and there were a lot of good listeners. The universality of emotions. Yes. Thank you all so much for sharing about your experience. I would like to invite any of you who would like to kind of raise your hand. You can do that through the reaction or just kind of wave, and then unmute and say a few words about your experience. Who would like to elaborate on what you typed into chat just now? Anyone who would like to share more? Yes, please. Mohammed, I saw your hand raised. If you can just unmute. Mir Mohammed, Mia, yes.
Thank you, Darla. Regarding this session, Story Circle, I enjoyed it very much. Really, it's a session of University of Emotions. I met with 4 of my partners, and I get knowledge and actually not knowledge, ideas of a diversity of cultures and the role of teachers and teaching ways. Excellent. Juvaida nicely explained that her views, she is willing to represent her country and her cultures to others so that everybody knows about her Malaysia. And then Dr. Anuradha Agnihotri very nicely described the role of teachers, because she is a teacher of education psychology. She nicely described that an experience meeting with the President of India, Mr. Abul Kalam Azad, how he impressed and inspired teachers and students so that they can do work very hard and never get demoralized. And then very nicely Join Park told us her experience. She is a teacher of United Nations University of Japan. She told us that she has a very painful experience regarding teachers in some region. Teachers are not feeling that teaching job is respectful or very comfortable. There might have some reasons, some issues, and the state should give concern on that matter. And then Ada nicely explained that though there is some cultural barrier with her as PhD student of Nigeria, but she nicely managed and cooperate to complete the PhD thesis of to an Nigerian students. And seeing all the stories, I'm simply impressed.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that summary of kind of the lessons, what the themes were that came out of your stories and the story circles. And it sounds like there were a lot of similarities around the experience around teaching and so on. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I see that Latika Sharma has a hand raised. If you would like to unmute and share with us a few of your thoughts from this experience.
Thank you, Darla, for this opportunity. Yes, in our group, I became very conscious of universality of emotions and of importance of relationships and how families matter a lot. In my group, we have people who have experiences with people from other communities, other religions, and maybe they are also in their own family having people from other communities and other religions. And those people who have multicultural families, they are more open to diversity, more empathetic, and they have, kind of a universal communication, which connects them to others. And they are not only limited to me, my, I. So this feeling of we was very prominent, and also appreciating the human, the human energizers, enthusiasm, humor, working together, teamwork. All this has been brought out in our conversations, and the stories really highlight the importance of family. So the relationships are the places from where sometimes we derive maximum energy or learn how to cope with conflict. And as we move out in the world, open mind really helps. And yes, the connect with nature, the same sky above our heads and the earth we walk on, the air we breathe is similar everywhere. So that is the biggest connect. So this is what we discussed and appreciated in our stories. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing those kind of common themes that emerge from your stories about the importance of family and relationship, and connecting with nature is something that we all can do as humans too. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes. So as you are reflecting then about this experience, I'm wondering, what was it like to practice listening for understanding? Was that difficult, hard, easy? And if you want to put your comments into chat, I invite you to do that. Just what was that like to practice listening for understanding? Yeah. So take just a moment to think about that. And yes, Mira, thank you for the comment about, yes, we're keeping this confidential for sure. And only the first part of this is the recording will be shared, but not what we're talking about now. And certainly in your breakouts, those were not recorded. So we're keeping this all confidential, all of us together too. Yes, thank you for that. So yeah, thoughts about what it was like to practice listening for understanding, or to hear your flashbacks, to either give your flashbacks or receive your flashbacks. What was that like? Yeah. So challenging. A lot of room for improvement in practicing listening for understanding. Yes. Oh, it was smooth and spontaneous. Yeah. Yeah. Empowering. Oh, yeah. Listening to the different accents in the group, it can be very motivating. To share. Yes, definitely. Yeah. And listening for understanding can be more difficult than we might realize. It was very inspiring and interesting and easy to do. Maybe we just need to be more intentional, right, about doing it more often. And it allowed for great collaboration. You reflect better when you listen for understanding. Great. Yes. It encourages that mutual respect. So important. Oh, it was not easy. Yeah. To interrupt. Yeah. Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. It needs a commitment. Listening needs a commitment to understanding. We need to be much more intentional about that. And being able to focus on the essence of what's being said is really important. Yeah, being more attentive, and it shows you care. Yes, it can show we really do care about the other instead of just kind of halfway listening, right? Which we often do as humans. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. And another person, yes, Umar writes, it's listening gives the breathing space to actually reflect, to think, and be more conscious in even what we say when we do respond, right? Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what about the flashbacks? What was it like to hear? Anybody else want to say anything about the flashbacks? Either that you gave or that you heard. And if you want to raise your hand, or if anyone else wants to raise their hand to comment, you are welcome to do so. Just about the flashbacks or listening. And if I don't see you, you can just unmute and speak also. Yes, I see Zubaida from Malaysia.
I think during the reflection, we noticed that different people would have different understanding. You notice there's differences in the perception or the understanding of the story, because one person would say another person would understand it differently. So I noticed that, and it's not for us to judge whether the other person is wrong or probably misunderstand. It's just that we just have to accept that, the perception could be different for one issue. So that's
Absolutely. Yes, that people hear things in different ways, right? They're hearing it through their own lens, their own experience. I know when I've been a participant, sometimes I've been surprised, like, really? That was what was most memorable about my story? I didn't think that was so important. But to the person listening, that's really what was most memorable for them, maybe based on their own experiences. So you're right, kind of there's different understandings, different ways of interpreting our stories, right? Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Someone else would like to share. I think I saw another hand up just a bit ago. Yes, Mira Kartiwi, yes, also from Malaysia. Yes, please, we'd love to hear from you.
I happen the same university as Dr. Zubaida. Yeah, but I would like to echo her points, and then that's what I observe as well. Sometimes we put emotions on the part of the stories that we would want people to capture, but what meaningful for other people is the other part, which is probably they can relate to. So it really opens my eyes that although we really want to make sure that this gets through, but people relate to the different parts of the stories depending on what they have experienced. So their experience in interpreting the stories is really meaningful for me, because I learned so much from this process behind why that part is the one that meaningful for them. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that. It is interesting to learn more then about why that was so meaningful for someone, and to understand more from them about that too. Great. Well, to all of you, thank you so much for sharing. Those of you who were sharing your experiences in story circles, I tried to capture some of it here in the comments as you were speaking, and if we were in person, I'd be kind of writing this up and so on. But what I'd like to invite you to do now, everyone, is to think about what is one takeaway, one lesson learned from your experience just now in story circles. And if you could please type that into chat. What's one thing you want to remember from this experience? One lesson learned, one takeaway for you. So I'll give you just a moment, and then if you can please enter those into chat, that would be wonderful. Right. Humanity has no boundaries. That a global citizen is human, is a human without boundaries. That everyone is different and incredibly valuable. Yes, and caring, it's so important to care for one another all the more, especially during this continued time of pandemic, for sure. There is unity and diversity, and that listening to each other can be a foundation in building sound relationships. About the importance of persistence, that we have different experiences and contexts, but we can respect those differences. Diversity is something to be celebrated, and that we can still relate to each other, even though we come from many different backgrounds. Yeah. That being attentive and listening is very important, especially listening for understanding. I'd love to say, you hope the friendships from the 30 to 40 minutes together will last forever. Yes, that's so special. That understanding requires listening and also observing and learning. Oh, so many wonderful lessons learned and takeaways that you're including here. I hope everyone's getting a chance to read all of these. These are just wonderful. And being open to learn. Yes, appreciating those differences and being able to kind of embrace the diversity of our humanity. And that can be a really important part of building a more peaceful world. So thank you so much to all of you for engaging in this. And again, we envision this UNESCO Story Circle experience as a way to really begin the workshop that you will do on global citizenship in the Asia Pacific region. We really hope that you might consider using this as a way to not only bring people together in community with each other, but then also to step out from this experience to really think about, again, the three core notions of global citizenship education. And I'm just asking you to reflect, this is in the guidebook, but to think about how does this activity generate respect for diversity? And so this would be a question you could ask participants in the workshop after they participated in the story circles. Another question you can ask participants is, where did you see solidarity illustrated as you were sharing with each other? Where did you see solidarity demonstrated? And then the last question to ask participants in your workshop would be, how would you describe your shared sense of humanity after participating in story circles? How would you describe your shared sense of humanity after participating in this story circle experience? So those are kind of the three broader reflection questions that we would encourage you to use with your participants in reflecting on the overall experience and how deeply this is embedded in global citizenship education. And for those of you who have the guide, the questions I was just sharing with you are on page 14. And again, all of what we were just doing is available open access. I mean, it's a hard copy, but it's also open access from UNESCO. And we will put the link for you so that you'll have the link to the manual in the different languages. And there's also a 2.5-minute video that UNESCO made to introduce story circles in case you want to share that with colleagues. And that's available in 3 languages. So we will provide those links to you at the end. So thank you again so much for participating. And we're now going to take just, I believe, a 5-minute break. Please don't disconnect. Please stay. But if you need to stand up and stretch or get a drink, we'll come back in 5 minutes to see what questions you might have as you think about facilitating story circles. And then we'll go and highlight a few more pieces to the manual for today. So that's what we'll do in 5 minutes. So we can just take a 5-minute break. Do not disconnect. Please stay connected. And we'll begin again in 5 minutes. Thank you so much. Okay, welcome back. We'll get started shortly. Okay, so as you're coming back, if there are any questions that you have about facilitating story circles, you can include those in chat. I also want to note that at the back of this manual, there's several pages of frequently asked questions. And so you might enjoy having a look at those as well. I see we already have one question here, so we can talk about that. We'll spend just a few minutes with any questions you may have, and then we'll move on to highlighting some other pieces about the guide and the workshop that you will hopefully be able to facilitate. So welcome back again, everyone. It's so good to see you again. I hope you had a good short break. As I mentioned, we'll just take a few minutes here with any questions you have on facilitating story circles, and then we'll move on to highlighting some other pieces from the guidebook before we wrap up for today's workshop, and then we'll continue tomorrow. So questions about what to be mindful about or stress when facilitating for teachers. So I would say it's really important to stress the importance of the protocol and of following the protocol. I have to say that when I've done this with teachers all over the world, they tend to be not so good at following the protocol. They kind of like to do their own thing and say, well, we don't really have to follow that. So really stress the importance of following the protocol. That's really, really important. And in terms of a successful debrief at an in-person workshop, that's actually one of the nice things when we do this online is it's so wonderful to be able to use chat and get everybody involved in the debrief. When you're in person, it's a little more challenging where you would kind of debrief in a similar way, but people have to speak up and say, and then I usually would write up some of the responses on a board or on a flip chart. But I always make sure at the end to hand out just a little piece of paper. In fact, I can actually show you. This is from one of the workshops I did in person, where they would write down their takeaways. And I if there's time, I have them then share in small groups their takeaways with each other so they can see some of the others. If there's no time, I just collect them, sometimes type them up later and share with the participants. So that's one way. The other neat thing to do with students, if you're debriefing this in person, is to have them do more visual work. So we were facilitating this with students in Cairo, Egypt, in person, and each story circle decided to prepare more of a visual representation of what they learned. And so some of them created posters or collages. Some of them chose to sing a song as an illustration of what they learned from story circles. So they stood up together and all sang a song together. It was very powerful. And in the manual, it talks about different ways you can debrief with students. So it doesn't have to all just be, let's discuss the experience afterwards, but you can, and even with younger students in the middle school in Vienna, they did a collage using pictures from magazines to illustrate what they learned. So there are different ways you can debrief. Debriefing is very important. The other thing I would say is to spend adequate time on the guidelines in the beginning. The purpose, making sure everyone understands the purpose of practicing those key intercultural skills that are so important to global citizenship. And then making sure you go over the guidelines, making sure everyone understands those. Those are all really important as you're facilitating. Other questions? Good question about having a moderator in the circle. In a traditional indigenous circle, there are circle keepers. There are people who keep the circle. We have modified this for instance. Typically, we do not have a moderator in the circles, and whether you're in person or here online, because what we found is if there's a moderator, or a facilitator in the circle, that person is viewed as having more power than the participants. And we see circles as a space where everyone comes to the circle as equals, even though in reality that may not be the case. And so we typically do not recommend that there be a facilitator in the circle. Even with the young children, the middle schoolers, they decided to walk each group step by step. So you had all of the steps together, you went off and did it, and you came back. With younger students, they decided it would be better to say, okay, here's the first thing you do. Everybody do that, then come back. Okay, now here's the second thing you do. And just kind of walk them through it, but they still didn't have, they did not have moderators in their groups. They were doing it themselves. Yeah, some other really good questions about how to use this with policymakers. We have used this some with policymakers, and with strong ideologies, that's where the guidelines become really important. This is not about trying to change people's minds. This is about learning. And that's a very different way of looking at this. And so that becomes really important. And then the question about learning styles, and that's actually a great segue into what we want to talk about now. So Lee, I don't know if we're able to do the share slides now. And other questions, please keep asking me on email and LinkedIn. I would love to continue to stay connected with you. And do have a look at the manual. And you'll see some of the questions you're asking, you'll see there as well. But do stay connected. I would love to hear any other questions you might have or how this goes for you. So in terms of the question about learning styles, those of you who teach know this is really, really important. And of course, in a workshop, it would not be, regardless of whether you're working with policymakers or educators or even students, it would not just be all lecture or all one way, right? Because we want to try to address the different learning styles in the group. And even though this is online, we're trying to include a combination of ways of facilitating this information to address different learning styles. So I just wanted to share kind of our approach to the guidebook. As you think about this. So we've talked about the three core notions, and that's what we're really trying to address through the workshop, but within the Asia Pacific context. And tomorrow you'll get to experience another activity as a way of really looking more into the taking it local part of the Asia Pacific context. And you'll get to experience a little bit of that activity on how you can do that in a more interactive way so that it's not just about, let's say, a lecture for the whole time of the workshop. We also are trying to look at how we can address the cognitive, socio-emotional, and behavioral dimensions of global citizenship so that it goes beyond the cognitive. And that is what I found so powerful about story circles. Yes, I could have given you a lecture on the intercultural skills needed in global citizenship and talked with you a lot about that theoretical model, but that wouldn't have been as impactful as what you just experienced in story circles. Because why? You were connecting with your emotions also. You felt much more connected to each other than you would have if I had just given you a lecture with slides. So you were really able to experience it more for yourselves, right? And practice. And you were able to have that hands-on practice, which gets to the third point you see there, about really having opportunities for kind of looking at a real world context, how you can use this, having some reflection time, making sure that's built into it. And then using kind of this combination of activities that really come from the different learning styles, whether it's through concrete experience. Other learning styles rely more on kind of reflection and thinking about it. And other learning styles, people just have to do it to really be able to understand it. And this is grounded in the theory. And some of you may be familiar. On the next slide, we have where this is coming from, and you'll find this in the guidebook. Kolb's learning cycle. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Kolb, but this is, just so you know, this is sort of the basis for how we were thinking about the workshop. And in particular, the orange graphic you see there lists some specific activities that fall into the different areas of the learning styles. So we were trying to make sure, as we were thinking about generally design, the workshop design, and of course you would adapt to your own context and to your participants. Of course, you would know that best, but just trying to kind of put together an overall outline. This is what that would look like. And this is the basis for it. And you'll see more information in the guide about it on page 4. So then on the next slide, in the guidebook, we provide a sample agenda. Again, you can adapt this however you wish, but we're suggesting that you start with the story circles as a way to really bring people in, build that community, and help center them on the 3 core notions of global citizenship right away. Then tomorrow you'll experience a bit of this exercise about looking at global citizenship education development in the Asia Pacific region, and how to delve into that a bit more deeply in a very interactive way. The guidebook also includes some other activities, particularly around the 3 core notions, and so you may or may not find those appropriate in your context, but we wanted to provide some other possibilities for you. And then you'll get to practice tomorrow this application exercise then that you could do with your participants. And specifically, we broke it out. There is one for policymakers and there's one for educators. So depending on the groups that you're working with, you can use those accordingly. And then of course, we say a few words then about how to kind of wrap up the workshop. So again, if this is useful, we invite you to use it, and especially to adapt it to your context, because you know best what will work with your participants in context. So we kind of wanted to close out today with this last piece on the next slide. And this is, again, and you'll find these listed in the guidebook. And those of you who teach, you'll know this already. But as you read over these, I would like to invite you to, from based on your experience, what other tips do you have that you can share with each other to facilitate this kind of workshop? And if you could just type those into the chat. And give you a few minutes to do that, just from your experience, other tips that you have found useful. I mean, here we do talk about making sure you have sufficient preparation time, and it's really laid out in detail about how to prepare, what you need to prepare for story circles, for example, and so on. Again, really to tailor the workshop to your participants' needs and context. This is coming out of a learner-centered approach. I've been working with both UNESCO and with the OECD on looking at the futures of education. And in both cases, what emerges is the importance of really focusing on the learner and partnering with the learner as we move forward. And so understanding what the needs are, how much do they already know about global citizenship? What are their questions? What do they need to know? And so on is really important. And so tailoring, this is just kind of broadly looking at it, this workshop. These 2 days looks at this very broadly, but it's important that you then take and tailor this to what you think would be most useful in your context. Being clear on the goals and desired outcomes are very important. And you heard that kind of set up some in the beginning with what Dr. Khan was saying. That's for this workshop. Then you will tailor it again for the workshops you'll give. You saw in the story circles, it's really important to create that safe environment. And there were guidelines that help do that. And we've talked already about the importance of using a variety of different approaches and activities in a workshop, so it's not all one thing. And then with any activities, those of you who do this know it's so important to debrief, and to debrief in an adequate way so that that's where the real learning occurs. So those are just some pieces to keep in mind. And I'm seeing some wonderful tips being provided here in chat. Yes, providing good guidance, maybe clear instructions about the session is very important. On a safe learning experience, please don't forget to ensure psychologically learning safe environments. Yes, thank you for that reminder. So having a physically safe as much as we can when we're in person or online, but also that psychologically learning safe environment. Thank you for noting that. Ensuring accessibility of the content. Yes, that's very important. And one thing I should mention that could potentially be a challenge with story circles, for example, is that language plays a key role. Everyone needs to understand and be able to use the same language and feel comfortable with that. And I'll give you an example. So I've done this several times in person in Japan. And then also since the pandemic, we've done this several times online. And it was advertised, I shouldn't say advertised, but the messaging was done in English about story circles. And so the assumption was made and so on that it would be in English. So participants came into that knowing it. So there was an assumption that participants would know English. And I did the same kind of facilitation that you experienced today in the beginning to set it up, and then they went into the breakouts. Well, apparently in one of the breakouts, that they decided to not do it in English, they did it in Japanese, because they checked to see if everybody knew Japanese. And there was one person who was from another country, but she has been living in Japan, and she said, yes, I know Japanese. But when we debriefed together as a whole group, she said to everybody, she said, that was really hard for me because I came into this with the expectation it would be in English. And then it switched on me. And while I can understand Japanese, she said, I'm not fluent in Japanese. And it was a really challenging experience because that's just, I wasn't expecting that. And then the group changed the language. So it was just an interesting observation to hear from her. So even the expectation of what language is going to be used is important to be clear about. Okay, let's see. So so sorry, that was, I mean, not exactly about the accessibility of the content, but language does play a key role in some of this as well, when we think about the Asia Pacific region. Other comments, good, yes, the good ice-breaking session really can make a big difference. So starting out strong with something like story circles can hopefully really help that. Yes, choosing participants carefully, and maybe who you invite in. I would also say, generally speaking, even for story circles, not to make it mandatory. So if someone doesn't want to be there, hopefully they say, fine, you don't have, it's not required. That may not be your context, but if possible, try not to make a workshop mandatory. Yes, participants need concrete outcomes. Thank you. Even from each exercise, right? For everything, like, why are we doing this? Making sure that's clear, that they know why and what you hope that they'll achieve from it. Yes, using participatory approaches, being authentic, making sure the contents are relevant and up to date, all very, very important tips. Thank you. Making sure the activities are fun to learn, and encouraging both behavioral and psychological activities. So looking at those different dimensions, very important. Yes, and the commitment statements. Thank you so much to all of you who shared these wonderful tips, and those can certainly be added as we're thinking about what we need to keep in mind and remember in facilitating these kind of workshops. Thank you again so much. I just want to leave a few minutes for any other questions or comments that you would like to share. before we wrap up for today? And you can type those into chat, any comments or questions as you kind of step back from what we've done today. And you can also raise your hand and share with us as well. As you're kind of thinking about this, what you've learned, what questions you have, just kind of to think back to where we started and we heard about the kind of setting the stage, and Dr. Khan especially helped us in understanding what we mean when we're talking about global citizenship, kind of walking us through the journey with global citizenship education development and GCED within the Asia Pacific region, and then introducing this guide, this how-to guide, based on the other materials that have already been made available through UNESCO, both the global one and the Asia Pacific guide on taking it local, and then beginning to kind of experience some of the activities from the guide, especially the story circles as a way to start, and then beginning to highlight some of the different pieces to think about in putting together such a workshop. So I see that Mohammed has a hand raised, and so we welcome your comment or question.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, it's a very nice gathering and a nice presentation. In case of global citizenship education, it is felt to me, actually, it should be incorporated in classroom activities. I think this is very important. This is very important. And it can be implemented more in the classroom. Whenever a teacher in a class, there is a student from a different religion. So he has a very good role. And second, it's a family is very important. It's very important. Family should have this flexibility to share other diversity, other religion. These are very important. As we know, students are usually we learn many things from the family than institution. So I think my suggestion how it can be incorporated in the classroom teaching, that it should be incorporated in the curriculum of every country. This is very important. My last things, if you give all the soft copy to our email, then we can go through this one, and we can take preparation for tomorrow. This is, thank you very much. Thank you again for your nice presentation. And,
yes, thank you so much for your comments and your suggestion. And it's really a really key piece to think about, and how to integrate GCED in the classroom and into the curriculum. That's so important. I know it's challenging, and that's maybe where the policymakers come in also, and looking at how this can be integrated into the curriculum, and how teachers can integrate this into the classroom. So that's a good question to ponder and think about as we go now into our workshop tomorrow as well. So thank you for that. And I see that is it APCEIU-UNESCO has a question or comment?
Yes. So first, I would like to say that it is a great presentation, and I really impressed with that. And also, like my experience regarding the GCED, actually, I used to join GCED trainings in South Korea. And that time, there are diverse of peoples around 47 countries, and we work together, and we define the word GCED like understanding the diversity, like how we can understanding with each other, and especially like how can we learn and work together. That I think it is a very important, as we as like a global people, like we need to be like kind of inclusive, like whether in the class or in the working place. Yeah. And my last comment is like I would like you to share me some experience regarding like how GCED could have to cope with the pandemics, for example, like COVID. Yeah. So I think this is also important because like we need to understand across the border during this critical situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Certainly your experience in understanding how important it is to really explore diversity and understanding that diversity and needing to learn how to live and work together is needed now more than ever as part of GCED. And I would say we're really almost facing two pandemics in some ways. One is the pandemic of COVID. The other, at least in my country of the United States, is the pandemic of hate. And we need GCED to really help address this. And I would say GCED is more relevant now than ever. And I come back to a comment that one of our participants made earlier today, that it's about we. We need to think of us, it's not us and them, but it's we. And that's what GCED is really all about, is looking at, remembering that it's all of us sharing this planet together. And I'm just so grateful to each of you for the work you're doing on GCED. And I have learned so much from each of you in the time that we've been together today. And I'm really looking forward to our time together tomorrow. So thanks so much for those comments. One last piece we have for you today, and this is, as you heard, reflection is a key part of this design. We want to invite you to just do a quick, this is meant to be just a quick reflection, stepping back from all of what we've talked about, including our very first speakers with Ms. Marguerite, all the way until now. If you can just, Lee, I'm not sure if the slide is quite centered on the screen, but this is meant to be a very, very brief reflection. And what the slide said is, if you could just in your chat, what you would type is, you see here, just thinking back on all of it, not just story circles now. So one insight from today, one action step that you want to do, like maybe even for homework today. And then one, we say, burning question that you have. And you see an example here. So it would just be something very short. If we were in person, you would be writing this on a piece of paper, literally in 1 minute. For those teachers who are with us, this is called a minute paper. I use this quite a bit in my classes that I teach, and you can do different variations, but it's really meant to take less than 60 seconds, just to kind of quickly think what's in your mind right now. One insight, one action step, one burning question. Kind of put that just together in one post, and you see an example there of what that could look like. Now I'll give you a few minutes, because reflection is so important to all of this. Just to step back, take a kind of deep breath and reflect on what we've gained from today's workshop, and then make your post. Great. Thank you so much for your reflections. I hope you saw some words or phrases that stood out to you as you're reading each other's kind of minute papers. Some of the phrases that stand out to me, the power of patience, the beauty in our differences, and that diversity is beautiful. Yeah. And that this is, in the end, really a lifelong learning experience for all of us. So thank you again so much for being part of day one of our workshop. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. And with that, I want to again say just thanks, a deep thank you to each of you for sharing so much of yourselves today. And I want to turn it back over to my UNESCO colleagues. So over to you, Lee, or to Dr. Khan.
I guess I will jump in. Thank you, thank all of you for your active participation today, and we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow again, and for another 2.5 hours session. We thank you so much for today's input and your experience sharing, etc. And thank Dr. Deardorff for your excellent facilitation as well. In short, we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and see you soon.